Hey everybody, Evan Kirstel here. Really excited for this chat today with Haim Mazal of GigaMon. Haim, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Evan.
Thanks for being here. You have a really legendary career, to be frank, and I'm so excited to pick your brain on so many different topics around the cybersecurity space. Before that, would love for you to introduce yourself, your background, your bio, and your role at GigaMon these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So my name's Haim Mazal. I'm the Chief Security Officer at GigaMon. So I'm responsible for all corporate security, product security, IT, backend business applications, pretty much the whole technology stack at GigaMon. Prior to GigaMon, I was at Conji, where I was the SVP of Technology and CSO, where I was in charge of product development and security for that MDM platform. And prior to that, I was a CSO at ActiveCampaign, which is a global leader in sales and marketing automation, competitors to Marketo and HubSpot. A little bit about me. I've been in the community in security for about 15 years. I've been highly, involved with a multitude of different security product companies, working on product roadmaps, really being able to drive solutions for the industry and for my peer group, because security is an evolving challenge, and making sure that I'm able to go ahead and influence it selfishly to be successful within my role and to help my peer group be successful within theirs.
Love the mission. We're going to dive in. The focus today is observability. And, definitionally, let's start there. I've seen many different definitions. How do you define observability today? And why is it such an increasingly fundamental role in protection and security in the modern enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about it in the broad sense, and then I'll talk about it in a more particular sense as well. So observability, first and foremost, is the ability to have visibility end to end across all of your applications and or assets in your environment. So the key to security and reducing risk for organizations is being able to have detailed insight into what you own. And if you can't do that, it becomes extremely hard to be able to fulfill your mission statement in the world. So observability historically has been really around application performance monitoring. And a lot of the things that have gone into it are, using metrics, events, traces, logs to be able to have indications of what's happening across your applications and or what's happening across your servers from a non-intrusive perspective. The only problem with that is that there's limitations to those data sets, and it doesn't give you the full end-to-end spectrum. And so, in the broader sense, it's helped us get to where we are as an industry, being able to have a lot of visibility and detailed insight into what's happening across our environments and our applications and our assets. But it's not without its own shortcomings as well, which I'll talk about here a little bit as well. So one of the things that we believe is at GigaMon is missing from this picture is having deep observability, which is one step further, which is kind of how we take this to the next level. And deep observability means that we take one of the shortcomings of observability, which is that mutable traffic via logs, right, which can be altered and tampered with and overridden. And we say we're going to take that network level telemetry, the full packet capture. We're going to go ahead and take that data, and which is immutable, right? You cannot go ahead and alter and change those data sets. And we're going to go ahead and reduce it down to metadata. So an organization could fully reconstitute that data and be able to have the insight and detail and validation, verification that this isn't true, the real information that's taking place and being transferred across their environments, whether that's their servers and or their applications.
Fantastic. Give us some examples of more recent threats specifically that have led to this, shift in need for deep observability. What are you seeing out there today?
Yeah, absolutely. So not so long ago, without going into a great amount of detail here, but within the last 3 to 4 months, there was a pretty considerable breach. And that breach, there was a bastion that was held within an organization for over 6 months worth of time, and they were able to go ahead and gain access to some network level hardware, and they rewrote the logs to go ahead and show essentially for the EDR solution that was in place that there was no alert that was actually bypassed or triggered. So within that 6 month period of time, they used that to do reconnaissance and be able to pivot laterally throughout that environment to be able to gain access obviously to more critical information and data sets. And this isn't something new. This is something that we've seen historically for a while, but it's something that's become more and more prevalent as sophistication evolves amongst attackers.
Yeah, sophisticated indeed. Now there are cost implications, resource implications for
Yeah.
increased observability and security. So how do you balance this demand for increased threat protection with other priorities of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that has to be taken into consideration. Obviously, there's a give and take. So historically, with observability, right, you have to have a detailed amount um, of individuals who are working either in your security operations or they're working in your infrastructure team or your network operations team, being able to go over and view these logs, being able to write rule sets and perform threat hunting and things like that. So obviously that cost that everyone has been paying for it is going to stay there. But the difference is like, hey, how can we be more effective with some of these observability, with some of this data transfer? How can we be more performant? How can we essentially be able to have a better outcome for less money in on the performance side within our environments? While still staffing it appropriately with the right individuals across the right business units. But really, something that we've seen is success with our net flows. Not all tools need all access to all data at all times. So being able to figure out effectively how we transfer the appropriate data to the appropriate tools so you can get that steel thread and get that full end-to-end view across your environment is something that's been key for us. It's easy to log, right? It's hard to log well. This is an age-old adage across technology organizations. So for us, right, we want to be able to have the full view of that immutable network level data. We want to be able to have the full actionability of that data, but we want to make sure that we're piping it to the right places at the right time. And that's giving us advantages as far as performance, as far as egress, ingress, and being able to be successful across a multitude of environments. So one of the big problems that we're seeing as far as cost effectiveness and efficiencies is with the hybrid cloud and on-premise environments. The diversity of these different areas has a huge impact to cost, right? So a lot of times organizations say, hey, how can I get, the furthest without being, completely stuck in this circular fashion of like, we're never going to be able to afford for the value that we're getting out of this. So I think GigaMon solved this problem in a unique way by saying, hey, we're going to reduce the amount of egress that you might have or reduce the amount of ingress that you might have and make sure that you're still getting that full view holistically across all of your environments. You have that steel thread, that single pane of glass, but we're doing it in a much more performant, cost-effective way where we're feeding the right tools, the right data sets to have that full view.
That's fantastic. And what differentiates deep observability from other best practices or approaches to security? You've seen them all personally
Yeah,
firsthand. What say
absolutely.
you?
So I think the most interesting part is it's that continuous validation of your data set across the board, which for me is, worth, uh, every single dollar spent in my security program because it gives me an extra level of confidence that allows me to sleep well at night. So I have tools and I have systems, and I'm feeding in all this data across the board. And I'm not 100% sure if that data has been validated. I'm not 100% sure if that east-west traffic, right, that I seemingly have insight into, that if it's nefarious or normalized traffic, and being able to have insight to this information, saying like, hey, I have all my tools, I have all the metrics, I have all these things being fed, but then underneath that, right, I have this continuous flow of data that's continuously validating that my data is in fact, uh, real and true. That's something that I think most organizations are seeing that they can't live without, right? Because as things become complex, as attackers go ahead and continue to evolve, it's very, very difficult to make sure that the data that we do in fact have hasn't been tampered, especially in the event that someone were able to gain access and be able to tamper with those traditional set of metrics and logs that we look at.
Fantastic. The environment is so complex now when it comes to the enterprise. We have enterprises with multiple clouds now, not just
Yeah,
hyperscaler public clouds,
yeah.
but private clouds and hybrid scenarios. How do you protect across that very complex environment, multi-cloud environment?
Absolutely. So that's the interesting portion too, is like as organizations grow and the environments become more complex, there's not a silver bullet, right? Every single cloud is going to have a different set of security tooling and or baked in offerings that are going to allow individuals to be successful with implementing security controls. But one of the things that we continue to see across the board, across all of our customers, is that there is a hybrid cloud approach, and that has been the industry kind of direction, right? So everyone is using different cloud providers to solve different issues within the organizations. Whether AWS is for application development, or GCP is being used for data storage and analytics, or Azure is being used for back-end business applications, right? So the world as a whole has chosen that there will be a multitude of cloud providers in place, and people are still obviously using their private cloud as well, using virtualization, solving that halfway step between their on-premise environments and going to the public cloud. So we're seeing that across the board. And of course, right, you want to make sure that you have a holistic view across these things. Everything that you're doing for your on-premise data centers and that end-to-end visibility, you want to be able to ensure that you have across your cloud providers. And every cloud provider is probably going to have a different set of toolings that's built in natively, a different set of applications that's running natively. But the commonality amongst all of them is you want to have those continuous data feeds, right, being sent to a place where your security operations team or your network operations team has full visibility to do threat hunting or to do triaging against performance, to make sure that your environments are humming along and running without any major implications. So as we continue to evolve across the board, we look at all of these security controls put in place. I think there's a good set of standards for cloud-based applications and cloud-based security tools that people are using. I think there's a good set of standards for observability tools that people are using. But I think in making sure that all the appropriate tooling and all the environments is being fed that appropriate network level set of data, I think that's where GigaMon comes in and really shines. So it allows you to take the individuality of all of your environments, but to perform the unified way of consuming that data and being able to approach and address things in a pragmatic way.
Oh, that's really great. And you guys at GigaMon recently introduced a report on security in the hybrid cloud. Any findings there that were surprising, maybe that informed some of your best practices?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was one of the stats that came out was 97% of the people surveyed felt that they had end-to-end visibility across all their environments and assets. But that's like a direct, contradiction of 33% of individuals experiencing a breach for a significant period of time before it's actually identified. So just the difference in gap in those numbers. Number one, we've kind of been lulled into a false sense of confidence a little bit with some of the things that we're able to do today, and with some of the evolution of security tooling as far as cloud security posture management tooling and vulnerability management, and just the general hygiene that all of us implement in our programs on the day to day. But the second one is, what about those known unknowns? And how are we going ahead and continuously validating and checking and making sure that we really do have that full end-to-end view, that full breadth of everything that exists in our environments? Because again, as businesses continue to evolve and as we continue to add value for our customers, right, the complexity of environments increase. We're going to continue to add additional assets and resources. And so making sure that we have a way to continue to scale and scope our environments as we go in real time is definitely critical. And I think that deep observability really plugs into that, because in the event that things are being built and your environments are evolving, you also have, again, that undeniable data source that tells you what's happening and what's going on. And so sometimes, obviously in businesses that are moving fast and, are looking to serve for stakeholders and customers, the right hand doesn't always know what the left hand is doing. And so having another set of data that validates and informs and really gives you that full end-to-end view, I think is critical.
Absolutely. And I'm reading more and more about encryption and encrypted traffic being a real pain point for IT and security teams. Yeah. First of all, why is that a challenge from your perspective? Any insights into managing that complexity of increasingly encrypted traffic?
Absolutely. So one of the things, I think this is definitely multifaceted here. But cloud providers, said, hey, we're going to encrypt all traffic out of the box, right? Because encrypting traffic is a good thing to do. And, historically speaking, from an attacker perspective, not all exploits and protocols that were used, right, to gain access to companies and data were over encrypted traffic. So it used to be a best practice, was an easy way to identify a third-party actor, nefarious actor, was looking for the unencrypted traffic, right? Obviously, as things evolved and as there's been, a whole bunch of frameworks written for exploits and to help bad actors be successful in their critical role and mission statement in the world. That has changed to doing it over encrypted protocols and encrypted traffic and using similar ciphers and blending in with normalized traffic across environments. So as the cloud providers say, hey, everything's going to be encrypted, out of the box. So in the worldview is encrypted traffic is good. So now it's a double-edged sword because all the good traffic is encrypted, potentially bad traffic is encrypted, and you don't have any real detailed insight to what's normalized, what's good, what's bad, what's being transferred, in east, west, or north, south. So it's very, very hard. And most organizations, I think, are starting to come to terms with this. And some best practices that organizations had on premise with running their own key management systems, having their own decryption capabilities, all of those things are pretty heavyweight. Take resources, take time, take planning, and take ongoing continuous maintenance. And so when you look to the cloud space, you're like, hey, we don't have that capability. And if we were going to do that, that would be a pretty significant lift for most organizations. Mm-hmm. So I think having deeper insight into encrypted traffic, the normalization of that traffic, and make sure that you have a lot of detailed insight into east-west traffic, especially in modern containerized environments, right? Using Kubernetes and containerization as a whole in cloud-based environments is going to be critical for organizations to be successful.
Totally. So we find ourselves in an interesting place in the enterprise now. We went from remote work to hybrid work, and it's almost like no two enterprises have the same hybrid strategy. So in this mix of a little bit of chaos and uncertainty, I mean, what is the role of observability now looking forward in this, a bit chaotic environment
Absolutely.
in the enterprise?
Yeah, it's funny. Me and my some peers of mine were just having this conversation yesterday. GigaMon focuses really on the server and the application side, but we were talking about like the expansion, the adoption of SASE across the board, making sure that we're looking at identity and access management. We're managing remote networks. We're being able to give all of our end consumers and end employees all the freedom to be able to do their job and to do it well by making sure that, and also making sure we have detailed insight into what's taking place across our corporate environments, our network traffic, and all those things. So one of the things that we think is very important is continuing to focus on continued partnerships and growth, where we're able to take all this information, you're able to plug it into your SIM, your security data lake, which I think is the future and the way that everyone is starting to move to, and making sure that you're able to look at all of those corporate metrics alongside of all of your production metrics and your server side metrics, and being able to paint that full picture holistically. But I think there's been a huge amount of innovation that was driven by COVID and remote work. And we're seeing a lot of really cool things happening across the board. I don't want to plug any direct companies, but listen, I think Cloudflare's been doing a tremendous job. Zscaler, we've seen some cool stuff from Netscope. So I think there's a lot of things, a lot of areas of improvement that we've seen in the last 2 years that are really helping us evolve as practitioners and operators across the board.
Yeah, it's a uncommon bright spot in our industry is this enhanced collaboration. Speaking of which, you do a lot of education with customers, things like this video and face-to-face meetings. What are some of the common misunderstandings, misconceptions around observability and security? There's a lot of FUD or unknowns out there, perhaps, with deep observability. What do you see most often?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me is, people feel very, very strong about a certain set of controls or a certain set of observability they might have in one environment. And then there might be some doubt whether or not that needs to actually be expanded in a uniform, holistic way into alternative environments. And the biggest place we've seen this, I think, is hybrid cloud, right? Like 85% of my assets are on premise, and I have a great program, and I know everything that's happening. There might be some divergence, in team and responsibilities, and I might not have as much influence on my cloud offerings. I might not have as much influence on my security operations team. I would love if I had that same holistic view that I have of my on-premise assets that I had in my cloud-based assets. But really, I'm not sure if the value's there, and I think we're doing okay, kind of, but I don't know. And the answer is, Obviously, if you want it and you're being successful with it and you're on premise, then the right move is to implement it in your cloud-based deployments as well. Because again, having a bright shining light on on 2/3 of your environment obviously is not how we win the day. So I think really talking to customers and really saying like, hey, you know what causes breach, what causes breaches, what causes security incidents. It's the lack of a uniform view and cracks that are created over time as a business continues to go ahead and evolve and adapt and roll out different product offerings or assets. And so making sure that we have that end-to-end visibility, I think, is one of the things that is really valuable. And I think as we continue to evolve and grow as an industry, especially practitioners who felt very comfortable in on-premise environments and maybe cloud migrations, or maybe having this whole a cloud kind of innovation prioritization
Mm.
within their organization, they don't feel as strong about it, and they don't want to press too hard, or they don't know if it's really one to one. And I would say the answer is yes, right? All of the best practices that you've done for your on-premise environments, you should be doing in the cloud as well. And I would go back and port that over as vice versa. Some of the new innovations in the cloud and best practices, we should be looking to implement those things on our on-premise environments as well. In this, great new world that we're approaching, the answer is innovation. The answer is yes. And we have a diversity of environments, and we've learned a lot of things over the last 10 years. And so we should continue to innovate, making sure that we draw the same controls uniformly across all of our assets to give us the best chance of being able to thwart nefarious actors.
Fantastic. Speaking of innovation, you guys at GigaMon have such a huge R&D effort. You're always looking ahead. Give us a peek. What sort of emerging technologies or maybe methodologies do you see shaping the future of observability? What's on the horizon that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we teased that a little bit, but I think really being able to have a detailed end-to-end view across encrypted and
Mm.
unencrypted traffic as you see fit in real time, we believe is the future. And being able to be able to have room and flexibility to decide when, where, and how you consume data in its full breadth, encrypted and unencrypted, we believe is the future. And so going forward, we have some cool innovations that our customers will be able to implement across a myriad of environments,
Mm.
and not withstanding any specific challenges based on deployment location. So we're very excited. Very excited about that.
Well, I'll be watching with interest. And finally, we're on the dog days of August here. You were just coming back from Defcon and Black Hat. You look like you had a lot of fun. Any takeaways you want to share besides all of the community building and meeting old friends?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I had a blast. I've been going for a long time, longer than I can remember. I think really some of the things that really resonated this year is that there's a lot of better together. Better together. There's
Mm.
been an extreme amount of focus on partnerships, and I think a reoccurring theme that I've heard is that we're all acknowledging that security is a data challenge, right? So having the right data in the right places is how organizations are going to be successful. And with that, we've seen a lot of strong investments moving to security data lakes, as I mentioned previous. So whether that's with Amazon Security Data Lake or Snowflake Security Data Lake, being able to have all of your data concentrated in a singular place, and then being able to overlay the tools that you want to be successful, making sure you can aggregate all of the data into the data lake in the first place, and then having the tools overlay to be successful, I think is going to provide practitioners new flexibility that previously wasn't had. And we're going to be able to be a lot more successful again with making sure that we have the end-to-end visibility. But I got to tell you, if I had 10 conversations, security data lake was like 7 of the 10.
Mm.
And so I think that the industry is moving towards flexibility with data management, being able to overlay SaaS security tools, and thinking about like comprehensive, holistic ways to have everything you need at your fingertips at all times, and then choose how you want to view, digest, and report on it. So I'm very
Fantastic.
excited about that.
Well, you're such an inspiration. And any advice to aspiring CSOs or cybersecurity geeks in general, career-wise, professionally, personally? You've had an amazing journey and career. What advice can you give those younger folks out there coming up in the industry?
It's It's cliche, but if you do what you love, it's not a job. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do as security providers is we can provide value, or security professionals is provide value back to the business. So if we're
Mhm.
continuously tying in our efforts and our accomplishments back to the business initiative, that's how we continue to gain funding. That's how we continue to have respect in the organization. So security for the sake of security, while is important, it has to be security for the sake of the business. And so
Mhm.
making sure that we keep that front and center, and that we're solving problems for our customers, we're solving problems for the business, right, will give us the tools and resources we need to do the job that we're expected to do on a daily basis.
Fantastic. Well, wonderful advice, wonderful insights. Thank you so much for sharing your time. I know you're very busy. Much appreciated. And thanks everyone for watching. Reach out to me or Haim from GigaMon with any questions, feedback. We love comments, replies, shares, etc. Thanks so much, Haim.
Thanks so much, Evan. Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.